Welcome to Prose Cons, a podcast by writers for writers, brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land this podcast was created on.
Hello, internet persons and personettes. Welcome to Prose Cons, the podcast where sometimes we feel like prose and sometimes, arguably more often, we feel like cons. With me today, I have Paddy Boylan.
Hello.
I have Matan.
Hi.
I hope I pronounced that correct. By now I should know your last name. And I also have Phoenix Reg.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Okay. So today, something that I wanted to discuss, I brought up, is I want to talk about the difference between writing, that is writing to a blank page, making new stuff, and also editing, because they are very different tool sets. They require very, different and specific mindsets. And I wanted to kind of deep dive into that and see how we go. But before we look into that, what's everyone been reading? Paddy?
I have been reading House of Leaves, and I'm about 3/5 of the way through it. I've talked about House of Leaves a few times before. Hang on, Phoenix and Matan, do you know what this book is? Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Okay, it's got a bit of a reputation.
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't know why.
Yeah, it turns up a lot in conversations about genre. It's a horror book, but it is a personal account of an essay about a documentary about a haunted house. And it's got like footnotes on the footnotes on the footnotes. And that's
like Inception.
Yeah, it's purposely designed like a maze of text for you to get lost in and feel bewildered by. It's very strange. The way he's written it is, I would recommend it as a way to see how weird the format of writing can get. But Alex, I don't know if you are getting this. I'm kind of feeling like it's a bit of a slog at the moment. There's only so many digressions into what is a house? What is the nature of house? Before my eyes start to glaze over. And I love a good essay, but I'm finding myself kind of like, okay, I want to get on to the next thing to read now.
Yeah. Look, you have to stick to the main story. I really found the whole, what was his name? Johnny Appleseed?
Johnny Truant?
Yeah,
Johnny
I
Truant.
found that whole bit very, it seemed a little gratuitous to me, frankly. But the main story is great. The main story is really good. Like, pursue that until the end because it is very, very good.
So there's the main story, which is the essay about the documentary about the haunted house. But then the story is told from the point of view of someone who has found this essay and is talking about it. And it keeps dropping back from that main part of the story to this guy in his apartment. I don't know, it keeps dropping out of the story in a way that's not entirely satisfying. Like, you want to get back to the main core of the story.
So many digressions about, like, going out to the club and meeting women and how they had sex. And I'm like, this is like the 4th time you've done this. And I'm just like, okay, cool, we get it, you fuck. Like, it's just a bit... Anyway.
It's interesting. And Alex, I still would like to do a one-on-one episode with you someday about it. Because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds great.
It's like the modern take on the like book as letter entries or diary entries and letters and stuff. Because like that was done with Dracula and
yes,
that was a pretty meta take. It's almost like now it's trying to get back to the cutting edge of meta storytelling.
It is,
and the way it's stacking formats.
It's also, I think it's also largely a satire of that. It reads sometimes very much as like a very self-aware satire. I don't know. It's interesting. It's clever. And I'm playing Elden Ring, and that was partly written by George R.R. Martin, so that counts as a book.
Yeah, totally. Cool. All right, Phoenix, what are you looking at?
I am actually rereading Harry Potter because I'm currently living in Chile, and reading Harry Potter is how I learn new languages. So I was reading the first book.
Is reading the first one in Spanish.
Who is?
My brother. He's learning Spanish. Same thing.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right. Yeah, I was reading the first one in Italian, and now I'm reading the second one in Spanish.
Are the curses the same? Are they still Latin? Did you change the curses in Spanish? Yeah. Okay.
Matan, what's the name of the book in Hebrew?
Oh, do you really want me to say it?
Yeah,
I gotta
yeah,
warm
go
my
on.
throat
Yeah.
first. So the Harry Potter ואבן החכמים.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Doesn't it make you want to have a glass of water?
It's very nice and it's really cool. Listening to stories and reading stories in other languages, because I love when I've noticed like the definitive line of like first you comprehend words, then you comprehend sentences, and I'm now to the point where reading that I can, even though it's in Spanish, I can see the story in my mind again. And it's like tuning, the story's like tuning, so I can actually like see it playing out now.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's a cool feeling.
Yeah, that's wild.
See, I've been doing that, and I like Harry Potter, so it's fun.
Great. Cool. How about you, Matan? What have you been reading recently or consuming?
So by myself, I've been reading Save the Cat, which has been recommended to me by our very own Alex, I believe, right? Was that you or Ali?
No, that would have been Ali. I haven't read it.
That would have been Ali. Screenwriting book, really great. But something interesting that's been happening, I've been reading a book with my students because I teach high school English. And we've been reading a book called Night, which has been written by a guy named Elie Wiesel. So the book Night is actually the autobiographical telling of the Holocaust through the eyes of Elie, who had been a 15-year-old boy at the time. And reading that in a room full of Jewish students who are the very same age that Elie had been, it's just powerful.
Yeah.
When I chose that book to read to them, I was a bit concerned, like, are they going to make fun of this? Because, it's kind of instinct when we're put in a serious situation and we're 14, 15, we kind of make a joke. And I've been just shocked by how seriously they're taking this. We did have to stop on more than one occasion because the events depicted are just intense. But yeah, it's a very powerful book, very short, about 110 pages, and not the first time I read it, but it still hits you. So
I think
I
how
don't...
seriously high school students take stuff like that also has to do with how much they respect their teacher. So kudos to you for actually having a class that isn't going to treat that lightly.
Yeah,
True.
Not an easy read, but if anyone's interested in one of the more harrowing events in human history, I highly recommend it.
You said it was a bibliography, or what was it?
An autobiography. He basically, it's his life
Autobiography.
story, originally written in Yiddish, then translated to French, and from there to English.
So it's a translation of a translation. So does that mean you're reading it to them in English?
Yeah, but I am reading it in English. But there's something about translated English. I really love it. It's very straightforward, and I find that students usually deal with it better than natively English books. There's something about the translation. A translator wouldn't pick, a certain type of words that might be problematic.
Okay,
but
right.
that's just.
I get that.
Ambiguous. Yeah.
I think it's partly because English has like 5 different words for
everything.
Everything, yeah.
180,000 words according to Wikipedia. That's the estimate.
Yeah.
180,000 words.
And does that include like the entire English lexicon, like including words borrowed, like fiance and
I think that's what makes it big, right?
I think so.
I heard French has like 1/6 of the number of words as English or something like that, because English keeps taking words from different languages.
Hebrew is a lot smaller than English. I think they estimate Hebrew to have like 50,000.
Wow.
Yeah. I know the French like guard their language religiously.
Same with Hebrew, right? An academy.
Hebrew was just dead. Yeah, but it was just dead for 2,000 years. So
it's waking up.
They didn't really collect. Yeah, making up for lost time.
For anyone who wants to, learn about the Holocaust, I guess you could try and read the Yiddish version, which would be if you want to go like
work on your Yiddish, guys.
Go like Phoenix and try and learn another language. Anyway, moving on.
Well, Alex, what have you been? What have you been reading?
Oh yeah, sorry.
We want to know. The audience demands this knowledge.
They deserved it. Give us the truth.
So I've been reading Nick Cutter's The Deep, which is it's a horror book, which is fairly typical of me. But it's I've been on a spate of reading horror novels recently that are really genuinely quite chilling. Yeah, so it's about basically it's about this virus that takes over the world where it makes you forget things, and the protagonist's brother is working down in this deep sea undersea station, I guess, like I don't know what you'd call it, like a laboratory. It's like right at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, because they found this thing down there that might be able to help, and things just start getting very wacky. It's very ambient, very spooky, very just, there's a lot of flashbacks back to like Stephen King esque, like nostalgia, things like that. Yeah, I mean his work just saturates through all of horror, but it's really good. I really like it.
Wait, I have to ask. You just said that the story is at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Yeah, the bottom.
Like how I don't
8
want
miles.
spoilers, but how big are like the fish, the aquatic creatures? How big are we talking here?
They don't talk a lot about the fish, actually. Apparently, there's nothing really down there. One thing he did mention, which I don't know if is real.
There's nothing down there.
Well,
the spoiler is that the trench itself is just a big open fish's mouth.
Well, you never know.
That's like my horror fetish is large water creatures. Like the bigger, the better.
Read Starfish. Yeah. Read Starfish. I don't remember who it's by, but if you want, man, the guy's a deep sea ecologist as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Creepy shit.
Ooh.
Yeah, good book.
Good book. One really interesting thing about it, and I don't know if this is real, but like he talks about all the sediment and like the dead skin and stuff that like falls down, like it all like kind of, because it's going into the Mariana Trench, it all like collects. So he said that there's almost like this snow that comes down.
Yeah, It's gross.
Awful.
It's really gross.
Horrifying. It's really horrifying. And the whole book is like that. It's great. I'm really enjoying it. So I recommend it if you guys are into it. It gets into all the psychological horror and terror stuff as well, which is good. Yeah, so that's what I've been reading. So editing versus writing. I think we've talked a little bit about this. I know
we must
Matan,
have.
What's that?
We must have, surely.
Yeah,
I'm sure we've touched on it like a dozen times in little ways.
But what I wanted to know was, because I always have this kind of guilt when I'm writing, that I always feel like I should be writing something new. So much to the point where I got onto I messaged Patty at the beginning of this year, because I know, Patty, you said you'd been doing a lot of, you're just focusing on writing some stuff every day. And I'm like, hey, should we like measure what different kinds of writing we're doing to make sure we're, and he said, well, I don't really know that that's necessary as long as we're writing. And it made me think, do I maybe have this relationship to it where I'm like, I don't count writing unless I'm actually making new words, and that seemed like a fascinating sort of thing. So I don't know, what's your guys' take on that? How do you feel about writing versus editing in terms of productivity? Let's put it that way.
No, I definitely have the same, like, now that you say it, I definitely have a similar kind of mentality around it, where I feel like I've accomplished more if I set aside an hour block and purely like just start from a new section and fill out as much as I can, get out as much new story as I can. I feel like I've really accomplished something. Whereas going back, I'm actually going back and doing some editing of some old short stories right now. And doing that, I do feel like I'm accomplishing something, but I guess it's, I don't know, it's kind of like, it is just harder to measure. It's like, well, I've restructured this scene. I don't know how many words I've taken, how many words I've added. The scene reads better, but I feel like I haven't done as much, because it's like, well, it's not news story. It's just reshaping what's there. But you know what? I think that has something to do with the fact that I know I have a tendency to kind of go back and edit before I finish a story. And I know I really need to hold my nose down and be like, just write, like keep going, get the first draft out before you really go back and edit. So I do feel good when I'm getting more story out, because I know it's better for my for the story overall, because I'll just get it out and then I can go back and edit. So if I catch myself going back and editing prematurely, I kind of have this whole like, what are you doing? Like, you should be writing forward. Don't go back yet. And I guess maybe it permeates to even short stories that are more or less like, this one's finished, I am just going back and redrafting. But I guess the mentality kind of permeates a little bit.
Contrary to popular belief, I don't actually go back to stuff I finished to rewrite them. I do a lot of rewriting on things that are unfinished, but I think I've only gone maybe once and actually rewrote an existing short story. Usually once I hit the end button, I'm pretty much done with the story. I do a lot of my rewriting as the process is still ongoing. As I'm writing the thing, even with my short stories, like a 4,000 word, 5,000 word short story, I'd probably write it in one hit or two and then rewrite. I think each writer has their own process. Some of us like to rewrite more than others. Others feel like if they're writing on a blank page, then they're being more productive. Personally, I really enjoy looking at something that I wrote and kind of analyzing it, trying to be my own feedback kind of cycle, reading it, trying to find something that's wrong with it, how to improve it, and kind of go from there. I cannot imagine showing something to someone without doing this at least once.
Same.
Yeah.
But
It feels too raw.
But on the other hand, I think that if you sink too much into that habit, the blank page becomes more and more intimidating the longer you've been away from it. Especially if you're working on a big novel and you haven't seen the blank page in a while.
Oh yes.
At least for me, it's like hello darkness, my old friend, something like that.
Yeah.
Hello, pure white, my old friend.
Yeah. That feels incredibly real.
Yeah.
Getting like an eye twitch over here.
What about you, Paddy? How do you relate?
Well, Alex, when we were talking about that, and you were like, "Yeah, let's like hold each other accountable." Yeah, sounds good. Do we count editing? I definitely would, because I mean it is just as important, right? I mean, if you have to write every day and don't edit, when do you carve out time for editing? I mean, I'm someone that struggles to find time to write as it is. I'm trying to write every day now, and so far that's been successful. But I would just get no time to edit. And I think I'm more similar to Matan in that, I mean, I like editing. I genuinely like editing. I like the whittling, the whittling away until you've got a perfectly formed
your statue to the ground, breaking it with a 5-kilo hammer, and then
screaming it's rubbish
scratch.
and then burning everything you've ever done. Yeah, that too. I mean, I enjoy it, but I mean, it's so important. Like, you have to edit. So if you don't place that with equal value, when do you ever get time? Having said that, I do serial over edit. I've noticed that I do it. I mean, I've got stuff that I've edited like 18 times. It's too much, and probably anyone reading it who wasn't me would be like, "Nah, this is just as good. You've just moved the then from the beginning of the sentence to the end of the sentence. Like, what are you doing?" So I got to get out of that habit.
Well, you got to do that.
I can't tell if you're being serious or not.
No, I'm joking.
Because there's a part of me that's like, yes, you do, Phoenix. Yes, you do. But,
well, when I'm editing, I don't really trust myself to. Okay, so my process is, and I've probably said this on the podcast many times. I need to write it, and it needs to be more or less done before I want to go back and edit. Not necessarily because I don't think it could be better, because I always think it can be better. When is a painting finished? But just because from a plot perspective, I need to see the whole thing on paper before I'm like, well, this part definitely needs to be changed, because otherwise, if the story isn't done and then I realize I've been tinkering around with this thing at the beginning and then something at the end happens that completely invalidates that, which is not, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, or at least there's some sort of major insert you need to put into it.
You could be on draft 5 of a scene that doesn't even make it in, right?
That's exactly right.
I'm finding that with my current work.
5?
Actually,
it's
5,
that's
always rookie numbers.
It's always that push and pull between this should be better. But so what I like to do is I like to go through it, have it more or less done, and sometimes I'll do that in 2 chunks. I'll just, like, for a novel, which I've written a couple of now, like I'll do maybe like a couple of months and do it, and then just put it down for a bit and go back and finish it, and then I have to go through and do one draft. But after that first draft through, that first redraft, I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to find anything significant here that needs to be changed. Someone else needs to get their eyes on this, which is what I've been doing with you, Paddy, in terms of the novella that I'm writing. I got through, and I was like, this is as good as I can get it at this stage. It needs to be shipped off to someone else to see it.
Which is very good, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Praise it openly. It's great. It's really enjoyable.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
My girlfriend has some other thoughts on it, but that's
It needs work, no doubt, but
mine does.
I thought it was really fun.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like what you said about like drafting is just important as you know, generating new material, and yeah, the idea of placing it, like finding a separate time to draft is, now that I think about it, is kind of wild. Like, you know, you probably really only get one stint of writing if you're not making writing your day job. So yeah, I mean, yeah, where do you guys carve out your drafting time? Do you just, well, I guess as you've said, you most of you guys just do it within it. So you'll just write and then you'll edit and write and edit, which kind of makes a lot of sense.
I think for me, it's not a separate thing.
Okay.
A lot of the time, some of my most productive writing sessions have started as an editing session, where I think that's advice I got from you, Alex, that basically read the last thing you wrote,
Yeah,
and then kind of slide into the blank page
totally.
with some sort of momentum. And
Wait,
I'm
can you elaborate on that a little more? I actually don't understand what you mean by that.
so like, let's say I finished chapter 13 yesterday. Now it's time to write chapter 14. So I start the morning as I'm sipping my cup of coffee. I'm reading chapter 13, but since I am physically incapable of looking at something I wrote without messing with it, it often starts as an editing session.
Yeah.
And if I liked it, the editing session will be short and I will slide into the next chapter, into the blank page. If I hate it, I will just spend the whole morning rewriting chapter 13 and so on and on. But it's kind of my process.
I mean, it's still progress either way, right?
They're definitely,
Yeah.
As long as it's better.
definitely.
As long as it's better.
As long as the edits are in their low teens, it's progress.
I don't even know how many times I redrafted stuff. I don't
Yeah,
check.
I feel you.
How many coffees did you have today? Who knows? Who cares? You know.
Alex, you said earlier that like it's probably a good way to do it. Like redrafting as you go on the like draft over scenes before it's totally finished.
Yeah.
Did you say that? I keep hearing advice now that says that's probably not the way to do it. You really do want to have a finished first draft before you.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it like that because like I said, I don't think I would get caught in that editing rabbit hole where it's just like I just need to redo it over and over again, because I'm like, look, how many different ways is this scene going to go? There's only like, I really like to think of a story in terms of its bare beats. And just think like, what's going on in this scene? What's going on in this scene? What's going on in this scene? How well is it written? Don't care. I just want it on the page. That's my first thing. That's like that's the skeleton. If you're making if you're building a car, I guess you start with the chassis, right? You got to have the chassis. If you don't have like, you're not going to be putting like, you're not going to be buffing the steering wheel or something before you've got all the stuff on. Like, I just that doesn't make sense to me.
Buffing the mirror dice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
look.
So my question to you guys is this: when you edit, are you just polishing the prose and grammar, or are you open to plot alterations? Like when you look at the chapter and you're like, you know what, the motivation here doesn't make sense. I know that I finished the chapter, I should move on to the next one. But do you allow yourself to make these kind of changes, or do you just write it down as a note and say, draft 2, I will check this motivation at chapter 13 that maybe at the time didn't make sense to me? So that's what I'm asking, because editing is not just, for me, it's not just grammar and prose. It's also what is this
structural
story
as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's you just get the baseline down until it's like, okay, this is complete in some sense. Then after that, the big structural edits happen, and that's where I need help from other people to go like, that doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? And then I'm going, yeah, of course, that motivation is really weak. Why would I have that there? And then once that's down, and I'm like, I'm happy with how this story is structured. I'm happy with the beats. I'm happy with how it goes. At that point, then, and I'll, like going through it, I'll probably be making little alterations, but like it's not the focus. And then at some point, I'm like, okay, I'm happy with this now. now I want to go back and fiddle with the prose. But those are different.
Yeah.
Those are different. Like what's the term? Like
Processes? Stuff?
yeah, different like swipes.
Not
through.
methodologies. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
That's,
different
Processes?
tools essentially.
It's different tools. That's like it's the same thing with like I get clients coming through that are like saying, oh, okay, I just need an edit job. And then part of my first thing that I need to break down with them was like, okay, what kind of editing are you after? How many drafts have you been through? Have you had an edit done before? Have you had a structural edit done? Because sometimes people assume it's like, okay, story's done. It's time to look at the prose. It's time to clean up the grammar. It's time to do all these things. But first you have to look at the whole story and move, because that's where you're most likely to move giant chunks, maybe delete giant chunks. And then people end up paying for like fine tuning of sections they end up throwing out. So it's like, no, do a structural edit first, go through, move your big pieces, make sure the story's solid, then clean out. And then at the end, you do a proofread, which is your final clean.
That's
And
really good.
You've probably got a what's a copy edit before that where you're going through and being like, oh, well, is this exactly what you want to write in terms of this? Is this how that's going to go across? Which is that finer tuned one, and then the proof is just that last idea.
You have your beta reading, which is usually done during your drafting of your first draft when you're kind of shaping it. Then after that, you go into your structural developmental editing, which is like, I have draft one. Does this make sense as a story? And then after that, you can do your line editing usually after that, which is actually where you're not focusing on punctuation and grammar. You're focusing on fluidity of the lines. On more of a sentence basis, does it make sense? Does it read well? Does it flow? Things like that. And then you do your copy editing, which is your punctuation and grammar. That's more mechanical. That's just like, we got to clean these out based on a style guide. And then you have your proofread, which is like, all right, it's been through a round or two of copy. Like, go through and just make sure it's clean. Catch the little things that snuck through. And then sometimes I'll do line and copy editing at the same time because they marry well. But sometimes I just do one or the other as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys find white writing from the blank page?
White writing, like, I love
even
that.
Though I keep
that's such a good
white writing. I didn't mean to say that.
I thought you said white writing, like as in like writing onto the white. I really like that. Like,
well, that's what it's called now.
White writing.
Yeah.
All right, great. No,
I just heard the term.
I can segue back.
Okay, I'll make it quick. I
okay.
just heard the term when I was in Colombia with my wife, black work and white work. So when they build a house, they actually give it to you without the paint. It's literally concrete.
Right.
And they call it the black work. The thing is whole. There's a door. Sometimes there are not even windows.
Okay.
But that's the black work. And the white work is like the thing that makes it look different than a cave, which is all the paint and stuff. So white work, black work. That's it.
Oh,
I'm
that's
done.
cool.
Interesting.
Thank you for listening.
Okay. You're welcome. I like that. Okay, so the white work. Do you guys find the white work of... I like drafting, but I still prefer putting words on a page. You guys?
It really depends. If I'm like...
I'm surprised, Alex. I thought you'd be absolutely adamantly, I don't...
If I'm
white work much more.
If I'm right at the beginning of the... By the way, we're referring to white work as on the blank.
Wait, which one is white work?
Okay,
black work anything?
You're right. It would start with black work. Okay, then writing on a blank page, to be specific. Do you guys? Do you guys prefer that?
Look, I really love that at the beginning of a project when I'm just like throwing things down. And then occasionally you'll get that like boost of stuff, but like oftentimes that can be a bit of a slog, like especially if you're right in that soggy middle of a novel where you're like, like they're just literally running around doing busy work at this point. Like, and every novel has that just to fill it out, just to fill out the tension and give you another space for like, a little bit more exposition. Like you can just feel it drag. It doesn't matter what the novel is. There's always a bit where you're like, okay. So
Between setup and payoff.
Yeah, but no, like I find editing to be almost endlessly rewarding, to be honest, because you can go to it and it's like a little I like the metaphor of carving. Like you're like, well, I was thinking the other day it'd be like pottery or something. You're like, well, that line doesn't really flow into that line very well, so let me smooth that down. And that's a very
it's the word Lego.
Word Lego, yeah. How do you feel about the word Lego, Matan?
Man, I love that word Lego. I'm addicted. What can I say?
Just the word Lego?
I feel like I feel like the white page, it's a love-hate relationship, because I'm not gonna lie, editing is fun, but it's a lot more satisfying to finish your writing session with 2,000 words that just weren't there. Like
Yeah.
to say there was nothing there. This is a brand new story,
Yeah.
and I can work with it.
Yeah.
And while editing is fun, there is that voice inside your head, especially if you're like me and you edit unfinished projects, that you're like, okay, this was good, but there's still that thing about
Could it be
finishing
better?
the book that's still out there.
And I guess it's also like if someone says, "How many words did you write today?" and you're editing, you're like, "Well, it's complicated.
know.
What is a word? What is writing?"
What is a
Whereas
word?
if you just
Yeah.
wrote on a page, you're like, "Oh, I wrote 2,000 words." That's like a very definitive benchmark by which to measure the success of the session.
Definitely.
I have something to add, but
Sorry,
there
guys,
are a
I'm just-
lot of
I'm just
people
trying-
outside my door right
There
now,
was-
and I'm very hesitant to turn my mic.
Are you talking smack about those
outside
people?
Wait,
No,
Phoenix,
well-
blink if you're in troubles.
Blink twice, yeah.
Blink.
I don't know.
No, it's not gonna
No.
blink. It's not gonna blink for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, it just doesn't blink.
I'll
That's the
just
problem.
do
I
wink
can't
out.
blink.
I can only wink. No, they seem to be quiet. I was gonna say I prefer cop out answer. I prefer both. But for me, it really comes down to just like honesty of like, am I editing because I'm scared of the blank page, or am I writing on the blank page because I'm scared of editing and I'm just avoiding what I should be doing? If I'm doing that, then chances are I'm not going to enjoy it as much, and I'm going to feel like I didn't accomplish much by the end because it was kind of avoidant as opposed to intentional, whatever. Whereas if I am like, oh, I do need to like, all right, scene done, I need to go back and edit it, and today's writing is for editing, then if I go back and edit like I'm supposed to, then I'm going to feel good by the end of the day, and it's going to feel good usually the whole time. Same thing if I'm writing on a blank page and I'm kind of in a scene that's sagging, and I'm realizing that the reason it doesn't feel as good is because I shouldn't be writing this scene right now. I need to plan this scene. I don't know where these characters are going. I need to step out of the actual words and just think about what this story is doing. And if I kind of ignore those signs of something else needing to happen and just continue on editing or writing or planning or whatever it is, then I'm not going to enjoy it. It's not going to feel productive. Yeah.
There is definitely something very satisfying about being like, okay, this is the thing that has to happen today. We have to get from this point to this point. And it doesn't matter if that's like, I'm going through the Patty's edit of my novella right now, and it's clear that I'm just like, okay, I go through this, I take his questions and comments as a jumping off point and go, that's true, but actually that makes me think of this other thing. And then instead of like immediately writing it down, I'll just put a note and then I'll continue on through. And that way I know when I get to the like edit, I guess, which would be the structural edit, I've just got this really clear roadmap that I can go, nah, that's a good point. I got to fill that plot hole in with something. And just clarity, I think, is what makes writing or editing fun. Certainly editing. Yeah, it's very difficult to write if you don't know what's going to happen, or you don't even know what's on the other side of what's happening.
You say that as a pantser, though. I would have thought that's 90% of the pantser experience. Is just like, who knows?
That is a
and
true
charging forward.
That is a true pantser, and I don't really.
You're a
consider
demi-pantser.
myself like a full on pantser.
Really, I always thought you were full. Let's
I've
just see what
tried that,
happens.
and
What's this book
some
about? I
of
don't
some
know.
of the stuff that comes out is just a bit rubbish. So now what I need is at least, James describes the same thing, having at least these levels of like, well, he has to get to this bit, then he has to get to this bit, and then that has to happen, and that. And if I have that, I feel much more confident in the writing, and that actually lets it vary off into like different things that I didn't plan.
Is that because you know how you're going to bring it back, or you know we're going to bring it back to?
Yeah, if you're going to climb a mountain, you got to know where the mountain is. You know what I mean? Like you gotta have somewhere you're shooting at. You don't have to go there directly. You can go around or whatever. But
I think through prose don't need to see the mountain to climb it. I think
you might be right. You might be right, but I can't do that.
I feel like even the most like sworn pantsers, even pantsers need to draft though. Like otherwise, it's just gonna like it's. I don't know. Sometimes pantsers go off in one direction for a particular scene because it's like flowing at the time when they're running, or like I do that anyway. And then I go back and I'm like, actually, I don't even want to go that direction. And then I have to cut the scene. But like, I feel like nobody can just, okay, maybe somebody just like start to finish and just run off and pants completely and just
I
like
didn't
release the
mean
draft.
without drafting. I meant without like beforehand plotting. I always thought that's what I thought. Pantsing, the definition was I'm writing without a plan.
Well, it's a spectrum, you know. It's that some people I think do just write. Like I know everybody's favorite horror writer. That's number 2. Stephen King. I think he just does. No, but actually, I remember reading some stuff of. He has this fascinating thing where he'll tell himself stories when he's in bed, and he'll like think of the stories,
and then
out.
he can't sleep that whole night.
He did that with the Green Mile. Apparently, he like just figured it out in his head. So you know, that is a degree of plotting to a sense. But if you're just like writing totally into the dark, it's like with no destination or anything in mind. That's very scary.
I always thought that's what you did.
You know, I gotta say, Alex, I came into this podcast, you know, thinking you're just gonna spend 50 minutes dunking on editing, you know, like bashing it, and I'm positively surprised. Like, you've. I think all of us came here with our prejudice, thinking, "Oh man, Alex is just gonna rip editing to shreds."
Yeah, editing sucks. I hate editing. I don't. No. Like
I saw it. I saw the topic. I'm like, okay, prepare to defend yourself, but.
Phoenix, you were saying like, everyone drafts a little bit, probably. Like, I don't see how it's avoidable, but I do wonder if there are any writers out there that what they've got on the page the first time, pretty much. I feel like,
as I say it, I'm like, there's got to be something. There's
got to be someone.
Like,
is it any good?
I heard like I'm sorry if this is completely fake, but I think I heard that Divergent was written in 1 month, like in just one.
Yeah, that's possible.
Like I haven't read it. It was turned into movies.
Yeah.
But the story goes that she wrote it in 30 days. Was her first book ever written. And
you hear about stuff like that. It's inconceivable, but it happens.
But hang on though. Like I believe that it was written in 30 days and it was her first book, but that doesn't mean it didn't go through multiple edits. Like this was a big publishing house thing. Like there's no way that was like page to publishing, like just with no redrafting or anything like that. Someone went to that and was like, okay, let's just have a look at what's going on here. They said the same thing about On the Road. He wrote that.
I was thinking that. Yeah.
Now that makes sense to me because it's just stream of consciousness.
I heard he wrote it on a single reel of typewriter without pages.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just.
Did we bring up?
Yeah.
Did you bring up Cormac McCarthy again somehow?
No, Jack Kerouac. On the Road.
On the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great
people
book.
Traveling around America, and it is great. Yeah.
If anyone hasn't read it, I really recommend it. It's very psychedelic and wild, and that the language is crazy. Don't watch the movie. The movie is awful, but book's really good. So bringing it back to that, finding time to write versus finding time to edit. I don't know how do you guys do it? I think we have covered that a little bit, but like, do you guys just all do it in the same setting? Like, is it like, what am I trying to say here? Like, do you carve out multiple sessions a day? I guess it's all different. Like, Patty, how would you do it? Matan sort of explained his process because obviously, Matan, you're doing it as you go, so it is inherently the same thing. But how would you do it, Patty? How would you like carve up a day in terms of writing versus editing?
Now that I think about it, I don't think I have much of a plan. This is making me realize like the ways that I can improve my process. I guess I'd look at whatever seems to need attention in the story. I don't know how I do it now that I think about it. Okay, so I'm writing this novel, first novel I've ever tried. And some scenes are on their first draft. Some scenes are like on their fourth. The thing's not finished. I know there's structural issues which I need to address. Looking back, like, what's been the plan for me writing this? I don't know. I started with a really solid structure, but
well, it's still pretty solid. You sent me the outline. It's very solid. But
I've taken stock of what I've written. I've written about, I think, 80,000 words so far, and the story's not done. It's not even nearly finished. I've gone off onto so many side tangents. I'm like, I'll just work this in. That's too much.
Mm.
So I need to go back and refocus.
There's a book that's entirely tangents. That's like the whole book. It's called Arabian Nights. That's what it is. It's like a story. Oh, I heard a story, and then a guy inside the story. Oh, I heard a story. Oh, and then a guy inside that story. Oh, I heard a story.
Yeah.
I'll just be the modern day Shahrazad. Shahrazad. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Tangent, the movie.
Tangents, the movie. Well, it's Inception, isn't it? That's what Inception is. Fundamental.
I guess it is.
You know, it's just a story within a story within a story, a dream within a dream within a dream. You know,
Which we've covered within our Stories Within Stories episode, which you can listen
Yes.
to after this.
for
more
more
Precipice Fiction.
yeah, for more information on this, click the link down below.
We're not going to do an episode of Precipice Fiction within this episode of Precipice Fiction. Welcome
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Precipice Fiction. We're going to talk about stories within stories.
Right on the precipice of the precipice of the precipice.
So I've contributed nothing. Nope, that's it. I'm done. I don't know. That was a really long way of saying I don't know.
Mm.
But no process is a process too. You just kind of go with it, right?
Is
Whatever feels right in that day.
Maybe,
Yeah, you figure it out as you go,
Yeah.
right?
I
Like,
guess.
I think that's
I
part
think that's more impressive. I mean,
It's
anyone
very
can write with
generous
a
of you.
process.
yeah, it takes more
Anyone
energy.
can
that's
write
for
with
sure.
a plan. You know, like you
Yeah.
just
In retrospect, it might turn out that like, yeah, you know, it was all fine and the way I approached it was all good, but it's not finished yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, but you're smashing through. Yeah, I
Get me
feel like
through
you're
it.
smashing through at a good pace though, because like I remember you talking about like your one short story, Behemoth, was it called?
The Fall of Behemoth, yeah.
Yeah, and you were talking about how much you redrafted and redrafted and redrafted, and I knew with this book you were writing new scene or like rewriting and rewriting and rewriting scenes. So to hear you're rewriting scenes a lot and also have 80,000 words, you're moving forward like quite well. So that's hats off to
Thank
you.
you. I had a big period of unemployment last year, which was actually fucking great, where I could just write, and I put it down to that. And yeah, it slowed down because I actually have to work. But yeah. Anyway, that's me.
How do you have a job?
Yeah, I'm a transcriber. It's okay. It's pretty boring, man. I don't want to get into it.
What do you transcribe? What's that?
Okay. This is such a tangent. Court
Tangent.
sessions and legal interviews and stuff all need to be recorded for posterity. I turn the recordings into written transcripts to
Wow.
go into a suitcase somewhere and possibly never be
Wow.
read.
They can't.
Check it out. A serial killer that hides the clues in modifications he does to transcripts.
That is pretty good, actually. I like that a
Yeah,
lot.
there's a story.
like
there's a
Zodiac.
story here.
Yeah.
Like the transcript killer.
The
Sorry, I'm
transcript
done.
killer.
It's
Well,
an
you
idea.
wouldn't be able to call him that until they caught them, though, right? Because you wouldn't know it was the transcript guy.
Retroactively, the transcript killer. Previously, just the
exactly.
killer.
It's written from his point of view, and he knows.
That is actually a
He
great.
knows.
That is actually a great concept. I don't really write crime fiction,
Yeah.
but it is a brilliant concept.
I was thinking there's some crime or some really thing that's some really thing. Listen to that English.
So
Something
really thing.
happening. So really thing that's happening. It's very disjointed, and the person that pieces it together is the transcriptor, who's hearing all these disjointed, random little things and writing it down, and the first to see it written out. Patty,
That's not a
maybe
bad
you're gonna
idea,
solve a
actually.
crime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alex, back to your question.
Yes.
How do you separate the time between editing and writing? Do you have like different sessions?
Well, I mean, I tried to do that, but I just would always run out of energy by the time I got to a second drafting session. So now, no, I think I just do it all in the same. Because one thing I know is that I am always very productive in the morning. I can always do something in the morning. So if I plan out what I'm going to do, ideally the night before, there will be something for me to sit down and do in terms of like writing. And then because like again I got it from Stephen King. That's three. I brought up three, so I gotta stop like actually bringing them up. We'll just do a little ding, put a little ding in it.
We should do a counter.
We do.
We should do a counter.
There is
We've got a counter on the
Stephen King,
episode
we got a
descriptions
counter.
now.
counter.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what?
we've got a counter.
We got
Yeah.
all like a
Stephen
month
King
time.
and counting.
Is that
Yeah,
is that the only counter we have? Can we have
Yeah.
more counters?
we can have more counters if you want. Like,
Let's
nobody can
Alex.
tell us
I
more.
don't know if we want to encourage more counters.
whoa,
here,
easy
man.
on the counter.
No,
Let's-
He suggested that you write. He's like, here's what I do. I write in the morning and I use the evening for editing. And it's like, sure, but that's your whole job. That's you're Stephen King. That's what you do. You know. So I've quickly realized that is not a practical solution for persons who are busy.
Not yet.
No. No,
one day.
Yeah, exactly. It's something to work towards for sure. But yeah, no, I like the idea of like just bashing it out in the morning and being like, cool, writing stuff is done for today. I've got my fix. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I have a real problem focusing on one story, but it is in a way it's good because it creates this like eye of the needle sort of thing where you're like, well, I can't really move on to another project until this one is completed. So I am drafting that right now using the notes Patty's given me. I've had a few other beta readers as well, who are going back and giving me really good feedback, and that's grist for the mill for me then to draft. So yeah, I guess I'm in a writing phase or an editing phase is how it seems to be working out most effectively.
I usually just set aside, I try to do 1 hour a day if I can, and say, all right, I'm setting a timer for an hour, or if I don't have time for that, I'm setting a timer for 30 minutes, and it's just like at least something. I work well with a timer, so I do that.
Why do you think that helps you?
It helps me because it keeps a sense of forward momentum. Even if I write nothing, I sat there with it for my allotted time. So it's like, the structure helps me mentally.
Makes sense.
As opposed to if I don't have the timer, I'm just kind of sitting and nothing's happening. I don't know how much time's gone by. I leave feeling like nothing happened. Whereas if I sat there and it's like, oh, nothing's coming to me, and I look at the timer and it's like, well, I have 10 minutes left, like sit with it for 10 more minutes, like stay with this. Then I feel like, well, nothing really came, but at least like I stayed with it, like I was in the space.
I want to try that actually. I think I could really benefit from that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea actually.
Worth to try.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like you can always write something. You can always write drivel on the page. The question is, can you be bothered to sit there and write that drivel? Is it worth writing that drivel? And I think for me, usually it is, because usually there'll be something out of it eventually. Like, you know, you might, even if that's only realizing like, hey, this isn't working, I need to try a different thing. Even if it's just that, I think that's still valuable. I think getting words on a page is valuable, but yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Are you okay forcing yourself to write, or is it kind of just like you're just happy to sit there and be like, nothing's coming, that's okay?
As far as writer's block goes, I rarely have an editing block. I think that's also almost my escape. When I have a writer's block, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna edit.
Distraction editing.
It's but the drivel, as you call it, is something that I think is very necessary. And because look, even if you delete the whole thing, you probably deleted it because now you know what you want.
Yeah, which by the way, I would never do. I would never ever delete anything I ever wrote. Just because
I deleted more chapters than
we know. It horrifies us. We look on with that and just like, oh God, Matan, how? As nothing was.
I think that
it seems.
I think that when I die, I'm going to be confronted with all the words
all the words you deleted.
Like as
Peter's going to be there.
Punishment.
Like, here you go.
As punishment, they're going to make me reread every chapter I've ever deleted.
But you know what? You're going to read it and be like, oh yeah, that actually wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
I'm going to hell for
100%.
nothing. I'm going to hell for nothing, basically.
You're the one that's saying your own words are hell, Matan.
Oh God.
This is a very we're holding up the mirror for you, man.
I think I need a long hard look at my deleted words. Actually, Alex made me promise I'm not going to delete them, but copy and paste them into.
Yes.
It's like I'm sending them to the farm at this point, and the farm is a different folder.
No, that's good though. I think like because I guarantee you'll go through those and read them at some point and be like, it's not that bad. I'm glad you're doing that now. I really am glad you're doing that.
The whole reason why I'm writing today, I started a process of writing several years ago. I started writing a book actually, and I got, I don't know, I probably made reasonable progress, like 30,000 words, and I decided this isn't any good. I shouldn't be doing it. I went back and read it and thought, actually, this is pretty good. Yeah. This is why I'm writing now. It's because I reevaluated my old work. If I hadn't done it, I don't think I would be doing this.
You never know. You never know. You know.
You never know.
Matan in a couple of years might be a different person to Matan now. You know.
That's right.
It never hurts just to keep it around, keep it in the farm. You know. So I'm glad you're doing that. If if you are doing that.
If you are actually,
I
doing
am.
that.
I can share my screen. I have
You know,
time.
I believe
They're
you. I
live,
believe you.
swear.
That's
I can show you. They're fine. Nothing's been done to them.
they're fine. We have your words. They're fine. They will not be hurt as long as you do exactly what we say. They will not be deleted. Okay, I think that's probably a good point to call it, to be honest. Let's see. I'm going to bring this quote. This is a great quote. I do actually want to talk about this quote just to see what everyone's interpretation of it, because me and Matan have very different interpretations of it. Okay. So this is by Mark Twain. He says, substitute damn every time you're inclined to write very. Your editor will delete it, and the writing will be just as it should be. That's by Mark Twain again. So my interpretation on that is that it's throwing out a red herring and being like, if you put damn every time there's a very, that the editor's going to be so caught up with getting rid of all the damns and being like, why have you written damn every time, that they'll actually neglect to edit the rest of your work. So you'll sort of trick them into not doing anything. That's what I thought. What did you think about that?
I mean, it's pretty obvious. The guy just want to make sure he doesn't use the word very. I mean, I think you just look too deep into it. It's kind of like my poetry teacher, like, what did he mean by that? What did he plan? No.
I don't know. Like, so he's saying it's better to write damn than to write very?
For what it's worth,
maybe
I actually think...
varies...
Oh, no, you go.
Go ahead, Paddy. Be the tiebreaker.
Matan.
Okay.
Insist.
I think he's saying the word very sucks. And
right. Okay.
if you put damn instead, the editor
It'll
will
be taken
for
out
sure
automatically. Okay. Yeah,
erase
fair
it.
That's how I took it as well.
I took it as Matan, but when I heard Alex, you say that, that actually sounds very Mark Twain.
I thought he was like, sneaky.
Trick the editor, and then your stuff will never be edited, because he was a genius and thought very highly of his own writing. So I actually think maybe you're right, Alex. But I don't know. We'll never know.
Maybe so.
It made I really like the idea of just changing all the varies to damn, and that being the story. I love
she was
that
an
idea.
Damn,
it was a damn
smart girl,
damn good.
Damn delicious.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it from us. There's been some very insightful,
damn insightful
advice here.
We're damn near the end now. Well, this has been myself, Alex, Paddy, Matan, and Phoenix. Signing off. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Prose and Cons, the Precipice Fiction podcast.